Hello and welcome to biology. My name is Gregory Becoat. I'm your instructor, and I'm going to get started on week one's individual assignment and what our focus will be on. We'll be focusing on the scientific method. So I'm going to share with you my desktop so you can see the presentation that we're looking at for today. So let's begin by giving you an introduction to biology. What is it? Here's my best definition: biology is the study of life and the changes that take place with all living things. Biology is studied through the scientific method. This is a segue to your individual work for this week on the scientific method. Please be sure to look at figure 1.4 of page 5 of your text so you can get a visual of the process and also view the additional comments for this particular assignment so you can be aware of my expectation. Just a sidebar, make sure you use APA formatting for all work. So the scientific method is the way scientists learn and study the world around them. It can be used to study anything from a leaf to a dog to the entire universe. The basis of the scientific method is asking questions and then trying to come up with the answers. When scientists see something they don't understand, they have some huge urge to answer questions and discover new things. The trick is that you have to be able to offer some evidence that confirms every answer you give. If you can't test your answer, other scientists can't test it to see if you were right or not. Think about it this way: you will never have to show that water is made up of one oxygen and two hydrogen. Many scientists before you have confirmed that fact. It will be your job as a new scientist to take that knowledge and use it in your new experiments. So scientists start with observations and then make a hypothesis, which is a guess, and then the fun begins. They must then prove their hypothesis with trials and tests that show why their data and results are correct. They must use controls, which are quantitative, based on values and figures, not emotions. Science needs both ideas, which is the hypothesis, and facts, which are the quantitative results, to move forward. Scientists can then examine their data and develop newer ideas. This process will lead to more observation and refinement of hypothesis. So, since the early times, Aristotle, 4th century BC, scientists used to believe that non living objects could give rise to living objects, that is, spontaneous generation. They believed that frogs were born as a result of mud. People noticed that the Nile River in the spring would leave behind mud that enabled people to grow their crops. And they noticed that in time, frogs appeared. So it was perfectly obvious to people back then that the muddy soil gave rise to the frogs. If you go to the butcher shop, you would see flies around the carcasses. So people believed that the rotting meat gave rise and birth to the flies. This came recipes for mice. Place a dirty shirt or some rags in the open pot, put a few grains of wheat in there, and 21 days, not 20, not 22, but 21 days, mice would appear. There would be adult males and females present, and they would be capable of mating and reproducing more mice. So finally, Francisco Redi, an Italian physician in 1668, disproved all of that. He did an experiment where he had three bottles, as you see here, with different levels of openness. You have one that was completely open, one that had gauze covered, and one that was completely covered. And in there was a variety of meat. You have tested veal, snake, fish. And the objective was to see, would flies end up at the bottom? So his hypothesis was that rotten meat does not turn into flies. Only flies can make more flies. So the results of this experiment showed that when it was completely open, there were flies and maggots in the jar. When there was a gauze covered, some of the eggs went through the gauze and the maggots grew on the meat, but no flies could enter. But the ones that were completely covered, there were no flies or no maggots seen. So Reedy was able to conclude that flies don't make uh, carcasses don't make flies. Flies create their own flies. And that's what you must do this week. You must perform your own experiment. You could look at bananas, for example, and say bananas on the counter rot faster than bananas in the refrigerator. And you could run this experiment by getting 20 bananas, placing them on the counter, 20 bananas, place them in the refrigerator, and see what happens. Now, you do not have to perform a live experiment, but think of what you believe would happen as a result of running this test. And that is what science does. And that is what the scientific method allows. It allows scientists to test many theories, many experiments, come up with results. And the results may not always be what you think they should be, but at least it can stem you forward with future research. That is all I have for today. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me and we will discuss the lecture and the individual assignment. All the best. Take care.